Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Brandon Saul. I'm a photographer based out of Northern California. And today's video is going to be about shooting my first rolls of Cinestill, as well as doing that for an awesome client that you'll learn about here at the end of the video. As well as just kind of lessons I've learned and things I've been reminded of about creativity and keeping it simple. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So I did this photo shoot over the course of 2 different nights. The first night my plan was to go to a place called Moss Landing just north of Monterey, California, as well as go into downtown Monterey at night to look for some like neon signs and whatnot, just to kind of play around with the halation in Cinestill, since this was my first time shooting it. And obviously I had to take a photo of a gas station. I mean, if you aren't with Cinestill, what are you really doing with it? So yeah, the first night I went over to Moss Landing, which was my first stop. So I shot this entire photo shoot for a client, and I shot all of the photos on digital and on film because I wanted the Cinestill look, but obviously with film, this is really my first time shooting film for a client, so I wanted to make sure to have backups on digital. And it was also one of my first times shooting at night with film, so I was still getting used to processing, you know, with reciprocity failure and whatnot. So it was kind of an interesting challenge for me. So I wanted to make sure to have that backup. So I am here at Moss Landing. Probably not supposed to park here, so I'm gonna go down the road and see if I can just pull off on the side of the road, pop out my tripod, and then take the shot I'm looking for. There's 2 very large smokestacks. You can't really see them because of the fog right now, but I'm gonna go try to get a photo of those with the car lights going through to try to get more of an abstract long exposure. So we'll see how that goes. So the first stop, you'll see me stop off on the side of the road and go over to Moss Landing. There's these nice 2 smokestacks sticking up, and it was a perfect night for it. Actually, at first I wasn't really sure how it was going to turn out, and I thought I would come back, but actually the photos ended up turning out really cool, just because there was a lot of fog and mist over the smokestacks, so it kind of gave a good abstract feel. All right, so I've got this composition, which looks pretty good. So I took some on one side of the bridge that you'll see in the video, and then I went across the bridge back down towards Monterey, and I stopped on the side of the road because you could see the factory up front with the smokestacks in the back. And I would say this is probably my favorite photo of the shoot. Personally, I didn't use it for, you know, the client work, but it is still my work that I really enjoy, and I'll probably put it up on my website or something. So I've got this composition, which looks pretty good. I'm going to take it on the digital first, and then if I think it's good enough, I might switch over to my Mamiya, my medium format. So we'll see how that turns out. So at the end of the first night, I went back down to Monterey, California, went to the downtown part of it, off of the main street, and kind of walked around and looked for some neon signs or anything that would really give me that rich, you know, dramatic halation over the lights with Cinestill. And I came up with some pretty cool photos. So actually one of the photos from that night ended up actually being the one that the client chose to use for the project, which I'll kind of go through the steps to getting there, and then some interesting lessons I've learned you know, from this shoot, and just kind of how it all worked out. So the second night I went to Big Sur, which was pretty much the entirety of the night. It was very interesting because that was my first time being in Big Sur at night. When I got there, I didn't really know necessarily where I wanted to go. I went to Bixby Bridge, which is a very typical place to go, but I went up on the mountain road right behind it. And I actually ended up getting some very odd and interesting photos because I brought a green laser with me just to kind of try some different things. You know, and I ended up shooting it, you know, right in between the two mountains that you can see in this photo. So this photo actually took, I want to say on my digital camera, it was over a minute exposure because I had a smaller aperture because I wanted to get more in focus, and obviously it was in the middle of the night. I did have a full moon, so interestingly enough, when I turned my camera to Bixby Bridge, when I used the Mamiya with Cinestill, when I took the photo, it actually looked almost like I took it, you know, at dusk or at, you know, in the daytime, just because the moon was so full and bright that night. So I don't know, it was a very interesting experience. Definitely really cool to be in Big Sur at night. And I kind of drove up and down the coast there just for a little bit to try to find some different spots, and I ended up not really coming back with anything necessarily other than just a couple cool photos that I enjoy personally. So getting into the lessons I've learned and kind of the end result photo. So I guess the lessons I've learned from this project was when I was going out, I was really excited about shooting for this client because number one, I really love their music. It is a band, and I really enjoy the artwork that they're looking for. So I was really excited to shoot on Cinestill because I thought that was a really good way to make it more abstract and colorful. But I also wanted to shoot on digital, so I did pick up some presets from Jamie Windsor. He has some really great presets for Cinestill to kind of match the color and halation of Cinestill film. So those worked out hand in hand pretty well. But with this client, you know, I really wanted to do the best job I could, and I was very excited to have like a 2-night operation where I went out the first night to these 2 different locations, Moss Landing and Monterey, and the second night would just be purely for Big Sur because that was the night it was going to be completely clear. So if I wanted to get any star trails or anything like that in the photo, I could, and I did end up getting a few in the Bixby Bridge photo, but ended up that the first night produced the photo that ended up being in the project, ended up being the cover art for their single, and that is this photo. I added some texture over it, as well as obviously their single title, and then as well as their band logo at the bottom. So this ended up being the end result. The client really loved it, I really loved it, but the funny thing is with the lesson that I learned from it is, you know, I went out to Big Sur the second night, I set up my tripod, you know, calculated reciprocity, you know, I was up there for like an hour or so, just, you know, making sure I got everything tuned in, dialed in, making sure I got the right photos that I wanted. You know, I bought a green laser and you know, an LED panel just to kind of try different things. And, you know, it ended up that from the first night, the photo that actually ended up being the cover art was digital. It was on my Fuji. And it was when I was walking down near Cannery Row in Monterey, and there was an LED sign. It was some advertisement for, I think it was like a psychic business or something like that. And I just saw it and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try an old photography trick that we all know and love or hate, either one, whichever camp you sit in. You know, a slower shutter speed, and then, you know, take the photo and then shake the camera just to get these trails of neon lights. And, you know, I took those 2 photos and I didn't really think too much of it. I was just kind of like, you know, these might be cool. So, you know, I added them into my Lightroom catalog and just kind of played around with it, but ended up being the photo that we used, you know, for the project. And I guess to wrap up the lesson that I learned, it's funny because I spent all this time and all this work, you know, focusing on like, okay, these are going to be the great photos. I'm going to go to Moss Landing. I'm going to take this photo on film. I'm going to go to Big Sur. I'm going to do all this. But ended up that just the easiest, most basic photo that I ended up taking without even thinking of it ended up being the one that both the client and I agreed kind of spoke to their music and to their single specifically. And it was just, you know, it wasn't frustrating. I wasn't mad. I was happy that we got a good product out of it. But it was just interesting. It made me think about it. And the lead of the band, you know, kind of agreed with me. He actually felt the same exact way about the song that they made, you know, that went along with this cover art, is that sometimes with our art and our creativity, we pour so much intention, so much work, so much focus into the end result, and you know, that works out well. Obviously we work hard for it, but sometimes it's just better to just do it and not really think about it. Obviously have some desires and some goals that you want to hit, but at the end of the day, you know, just diving into it and doing it is really what is needed for the project, or for most projects, you know. So so it was a lesson that I'd learned that I thought I would share with you. Without further ado, the client I was working for, their band is October Tuesday. and their new single is Supernova, and it is out now. It's been out for about a week or two now that I'm making this video. Personally, it was probably my favorite song of theirs. And yes, you know, the band, they're my personal friends, but I also love their music and love what they're doing. So if you're interested, please go ahead and check them out. You know, the cover art is what I made through this whole process with this video and with the photos I took. And I'm really proud of it, and they really enjoyed it. So thanks for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and hit the thumbs up because it does help out the channel. And then if you are interested in seeing more content like this, go ahead and hit subscribe. And then in the comments, let me know what you think was your favorite photo of the series that I captured. And then I'd love to have a discussion about, you know, experiences you've had with clients or experiences you've had just with your own personal photography. But yeah, other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you next time.